And to set up the field, I mean organizing the process. And that should be comfortable for you, the team, and everyone involved with the high relevance to the stage you're at and what you have negotiated people to work with. That typically goes to a bunch of things. It will go for schedule and routines. It will go for very basic plan, how company will function, what are the expectations on work. I'll explain each of this and a bunch of others. It's a longer list. It also involves if someone get paid, or how decisions are made, all of the essentials that would need to define the rules of engagement in between the people who are doing this specific game and this specific concept and this specific optimal strategy. So schedule and routines at this stage is important because ideally you want to make this initial stage free. You are just starting to prototype and define things, and you get involved with people based on the promise of us and them together just spending some of the savings, and you are trying things out before showing this to everyone. Or this is a model where already have raised some of the funds or using some of your own money and you're paying to the rest of the team, and that will call for schedule and routines. It's simple. Are you going to work in office? Are you going to work remote? Will we have the plan? What would be people's responsibilities? What are the expectations? I mean, like, what we will deliver on the first months, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? How do we build the plan, which is also a part of the future topics of the conversation? Very basic plan of the stages in development in general, and what are the quality benchmarks that you would be building before the vertical slice, because vertical slice will become the ultimate benchmark of quality, and how a company will function. Depending from all of these prerequisites, depending from who invests money or no one invests money at this stage, are you going to be an equal partnership, where it will be registered, how it will work in general, when investment events would happen, how would you share those, what are the people expectations on the salaries, are the options, and do you want to build one game and then do you want to build a second game, which obviously should be a part of the strategy of the company, and develop an IP or a franchise, or try different games in different genres, or you want to scale it infinitely, stuff like that. And when you set the field, you get to the point where you actually can start prototyping and working on the initial documents, scripts, notes, prototypes, concepts, all that jazz. This is a free-for-all stage, and I want to pay a separate attention because I know that a lot of people consider prototype to be a form of the demo of what you're up to build, and you're thinking about it as the build at this point. It's not necessarily the case all the time. Prototypes can be as much as, well, effectively, you can prototype features. You can prototype movement. You can prototype cameras. You can prototype separate elements. You can prototype systems that would not be in the game for the better understanding of what you're building. You can have a separate minigame prototype for throwing the grenade and see is it fun or not. And prototyping at all of the stages is extremely essential because, again, coming back to this configuration, right? You know, like where we have a designer fronting this up, and when the team grows, less and less people would want to read stuff. And once you start building prototypes, something that you can touch and play and understand, it starts to become an ultimate medium of what should be done in general. It's much easier to actually have a feature description and something prototyped at the blueprint, and that being given to an engineer with all the final settings, so they would do the same thing in a C++. Initial prototype for the just touch and feel of what you want to get from your game very vaguely in just the way that people communicate with the main character, for example, is extremely important as well. And everyone else on the team that's starting to do elements of work that will future become the actual project artifacts, and they're not yet at this point. Like designers will start to write feature briefs, and a level designer would start to do mocaps for the levels, and art people would start to produce art bible and a bunch of concepts, and there would be a story, and there would be a director's script that would be disassembled later to the inventor of the project, which is the topic of the next conversation. But in general, I would encourage teams at this point, especially with the dominance of the modern engines, if you're using one, to prototype as much as you can. And ideally, people should know the tool set in all of the specializations across your team. And it's much more easier to start bringing in this element of the development culture to make every proficiency technical at the early stage of the development. Because when you get to the point where it's like 20, 30, and 40 people, and you would want to change that if you didn't do this from the beginning, that would be very hard for you. Trust me, I tried. And sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully. But general culture of the pipelines and general culture of the constant prototyping to put any form of medium into the game environment and into the actual infrastructure environment is essentially very important. And once you get this, there is another answer why you need all this prototyping, people argue, and people argue based on the point hypothesis. People have the tendency to try to power play in different circumstances because everyone wants to have an authority, everyone wants to have the respect in the creative environment, again, largely fueled by ego and vanity factors and the desire to be the best one. It's game development, is largely production, is a very meritocracy-based type of the environment. It's people would not do great things and would not want to become extremely professional and perfect their skills. If they would not do that, there would be no great games. And that means that ideas will emerge, especially when you start to test out things. And at the stage before you actually go to the stage of the definition, when you will finalize the concept and a bunch of other things, it's better to start testing the ideas and to get through as much conversations as possible with actual results. Now, people will talk for hours and shout at each other, being like, I did this game before, you don't know what you're talking about, like all the stuff you're talking, it's not even relevant, you haven't played this game, I played this game. And the other person would be, well, actually, you know what, screw you, like you're just trying to boast yourself, all your things that you say are based on confidence, you know, like there is no actual application skills. And those conflicts are often happening in the creative environment, and the best thing that you can do to resolve this conflict is to actually build a prototype to check this hypothesis. So one of people say that we need to have additional camera for this specific animation action, and another person says that, well, if we do that later on the development, it will add us like 5,000 of animation hours and lots of work of managing this camera or whatever, this person argument. And this first person says, well, actually that's bullshit because I can do that more quickly because I know about this technology. And the second person says that no, you're not, this is just wishful thinking. And so what you should do is organize a situation where both of these people ideally work together to either approve or disapprove this hypothesis and to get an actual technical result of this potential opportunity or an issue in the production. So check everything by work is the simplest way to do that. Don't take no for an answer, especially when you're small, from people who are like just saying things and they don't want to prove it technically, or where someone else proves them technically, still staying jaded and still saying that this is something that wasn't possible and being grumpy and salty about it. So check as much hypothesis as possible and check it in work, check it in the field, check it in the working environment, and you would be doing a lot of this in the pre-production, and the sooner you start, the better. It actually leads to general alignment after the stage of initial prototyping and check of hypothesis, where ideally, before you actually go to an actual pre-production, you get to the situation where let's go for the whole of this thing, which is the weird thing I did, is that idea being incepted for the motivation to do specific thing, can team have decided to move as a team, not solo, in this specific composition of people to develop this specific game, which initially was a little bit disassembled from the point of view of vision and would not include some of the discipline and aspects, but because of the questionary and optimal strategy developed based on this information, team was able to set up the basic game plan for how the company will function, take the buy-ins of all of the people who would be a part of that, to start prototyping, making notes, the concepts, and again, all the just to test most of the hypotheses to understand what the kind of the actual game they would be building. And at this point, you're ready to start producing some of the real things. That would be the second part of the talk, which is a concept stage, definition, inventory, and feature list. That would be already an actual artifacts coming up for the, again, prototyping and more prototyping to roadmap, timeline, pipeline, quantifiable efforts, optimal user resources in the budget to finalize pre-production package and start with the vertical slice production. But we're not yet here. I mean, like, but we will get here. And at this initial aligning, the last thing I probably would want to talk about here is that you want to also keep this process free or very contained or very cheap for one simple reason, because before you align your core team, which ideally should not be more than 4 to 5 people, I wouldn't suggest you move further, because like every mistake, every overlook, and every synergy lacking in between those core people will project into the whole course of the development. And when people talk, when some of the investors who are not aware of the video game development who think who can just hire people, I mean, like, the element that they're missing is well-aligned team is a result of not just these preliminary stages, is a result of a couple of projects being done together. This is the point where people actually start to understand and feel each other and know each other best and worst practices, understand specifics of the composition of their team, and understand their own context and understand what actually they are doing. And this is the point where they start to produce actually something reasonable and a well enough done quality. just having money and throwing people together, even experienced people from different teams, that completely ignore some of the things that we're going to be talking in this course, and often leads to, well, a person from very big team who produced this amazing title of maybe were very dependent from the infrastructure of a 2,000 people company, and maybe this person just cannot repeat their success in the circumstances of a 20 people company situation. It can be as much as that.